So today in the UK has been designated a COVID reflection day. So I thought that's what we would do. We would have a look, just talk about, I think generally we want to forget COVID ever happened. But of course, for some people, as I was saying earlier, you can't forget it because, maybe you lost someone during COVID, or maybe your life was altered irrevocably during COVID. I just feel that 5 years ago, so that was 2000 then, was it? Now, when I first, as a Spanish teacher, when people come along and they do classes and I write out a receipt for them when they pay, and, you write in the date. And I remember when I first started to write 2020, it felt like something, God. So when I was a kid, we used to watch Space 1999 on the telly, and it was like talking about life in the future, people living in space, etc. And now here we were in the year 2020, and there was just something about writing it. I remember thinking, God, this looks like almost biblical or something. This, it seemed like an incredible. I'm lucky to get to 2020. Many people I've lost along the way never made it to 2020. So that's how the year started, wasn't it? So the year started. Nobody had any idea what was coming that year, did they? It happened so quick. It was incredible, really, wasn't it? And we'll all remember how it happened. And as far as it was for me, and here in Spain, is the weekend before the COVID sort of, everything went crazy in Spain. I had two friends out on holiday, friends that I'd known from school. They came out like for a long weekend. We had a great time. We were going out. It was just really nice. The weather was nice. We did some sunbathing on the roof. That was the weekend before. And, they went back to the UK. I can't remember exactly what day. It was probably the Monday or Tuesday. They were here for a long weekend anyway. Then Thursday came. I was working at classes. I was very busy at the time. Lots of students on the, my business will never recover and has never recovered from COVID. It'll never be like it was before. But on that last day, on that Thursday, I had 16 students in the classroom, and I had another teacher working with me. And, we worked the day, and then we didn't have class. I've always tried to avoid classes on a Friday. I'd rather work longer days, Monday to Thursday, and then get Friday as a day to sort of catch up with other things. So you have other things that you have to do. And so Thursday was like the Friday for us. And at the end of the day, we all said goodbye, see you on Monday. And of course, that wasn't to happen. Anyway, there was a few little signs already that something weird was happening. Now, by then, we'd heard of COVID, but it was in China. It was in China. It was nothing to do with us. I don't think anyone here in Spain really thought that it was going to come to Spain. Then, of course, next minute you hear a case in Madrid or whatever. And then everything just went crazy, but it was all happening behind the scenes. And a big problem that happened in Madrid, and I don't know if you're still here, Julie, and if you remember it, if you were in Madrid at the time, but a lot of people in Madrid and in big cities like that, they have holiday homes in the south of Spain. So when the COVID started, arrived in Madrid and people started going down with COVID, a lot of them that had holiday homes in Madrid just got in their cars and left Madrid and came to the south of Spain. We'd had no incidences of COVID before that, but suddenly they all descended on the area, on my area and all the areas in the south where they have their holiday homes. They all just appeared, families, hundreds, thousands of people, and they weren't stopped from leaving Madrid. I think that's one thing. The Spanish government were very slow on containing. I think it caught everybody by surprise. So before the Spanish government they did close down Madrid in the end and stop people leaving, but already a lot of people had left and they'd come to the coastal areas. So I remember that morning, my other teacher that was working with me, she said to me, "Oh, went to the supermarket last night. There's nothing in the supermarkets." So that would have been on the Wednesday evening. So I said, "What do you mean there's nothing in the supermarket?" So she said, apparently everyone's come, she'd heard, apparently everyone from Madrid has come here and they've gone into the supermarkets and bought up all the supermarkets, got in all stuff because it had already started in Madrid. So I thought, best go to the supermarket after work, like you do. So off I went to the super. So we all said goodbye to each other. See you on Monday, blah, 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 blah. I went off to the supermarket and there was nothing in the supermarket. And when I say nothing, well, I'm sure you all remember what it was like during COVID. And as far as the meat section was concerned, I never forget, I should have took a photo of it actually. There was one packet of chicken feet. You've got all these rows and rows of fridges where normally are packed full of meat. There was one bandeja, one tray of chicken feet. That was it. That was all there was in this particular supermarket. Now, this particular supermarket that I'd gone to is right in the heart of the area where, all the Madrileños have their holiday homes, etc. So luckily at the time, I had a car and I could go to a different supermarket, which is in more of a place where not many Spanish people go. And they still had loads of stuff and that. So at that moment, anyway, so I was able to get stuff in. I got a week shopping in, got some stuff for my son because my son wasn't living here at the time. He was living somewhere else. And we weren't under lockdown yet. That was, lockdown was only in Madrid because we'd had no cases. Anyway, the next morning, which was the Friday, I got a text from one of my students who'd been there the day before, and they said, "I don't know if I can come into class on Monday because the police have just," where he lived on the coast, right on the coast, said the police have just gone up and down all our roads with loudspeakers telling us to get into the house, to return to the house, and you cannot leave your house. So again, this was not an area that close to me, about 20 minutes drive from me. And I said, "Oh, right, okay." So he said, "So I don't know if I'll be able to come into class on Monday because I don't know how long this is going to last." So I just thought, "Oh, right, okay." So yeah, and he was scared. He said it was really scary because they were literally, the police were going around with, cars with the loudspeakers saying, "Return to your home, do not leave." It was like martial law, really, basically. That was the Friday. And then by Saturday morning, there was, Pedro Sanchez, our great leader, he was there on the TV saying to us, you cannot leave your home except for vital shopping for 2 weeks. That's how it started. 2 weeks. No, you can't leave your home for 2 weeks. And then he gave a criteria where you could go and get shopping. Or if you had to go somewhere, if you're an essential worker, you had to have a reason to go somewhere, and you had to have, and there were police everywhere. So I went to my son's to give him some money and some food and things, because I never forget, we had a little hug there on the street, and we weren't even sure we could have a hug. Because we weren't supposed to then, you weren't supposed to go to anyone's house. It didn't matter if it was your family. There were no bubbles. It was just, don't leave the house except to go to the supermarket. And you could only go to the supermarket alone, one person, not even a couple. And you can't talk to anyone. You have to buy more than €50 worth of shopping. And you have to go to a supermarket within 1 kilometre of your area. You know, all these rules. Anyway, there were police everywhere. I got stopped by police many times, but luckily I could explain to them whatever it was I was doing, because I didn't leave the house unless I had to anyway. I was very abiding with it all. So that was Saturday. So all this happened, you know, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and that's it. We were in lockdown. And of course, they said originally it was for 2 weeks, but it turned out being for 3 months or whatever. And then the other thing that happened was that was the Friday. Then on the Saturday, I slipped in the shower, and that's when I banged my eye. I talk about this in my Confessions of a Spanish Teacher book. Slipped on some conditioner in the bath, banged my head on the side of the bath, and had a massive black eye, and I wouldn't go to hospital. I was too terrified of going to hospital. And I still think to this day, I think I actually cracked my eye socket. Anyway, I'll just show you where you can read about that if you want to. Only if you want to, of course. I want to say thank you to a lot of you who've already bought this book. Why you can never find things. Oh, there you go. Now, this, what I'm showing you, is on Amazon.es, but you can buy it on any Amazon site. This book, Confessions of a Spanish Teacher, Part 1. You can buy it on Kindle, or you can buy it paperback. And yeah, it's an interesting read. Anyway, I talk about what happened in COVID. It's all in there, and also about sort of, you know, if you want to know about me, you know, where I was born, how I ended up coming to Spain, how I ended up being a Spanish teacher, how I got interested in true crime, etc. It's a bit of an autobiography, if you like, I suppose. And it's available on any Amazon site. Okay. Let me just put a few windows down. So yeah, but everybody's got their COVID experience, haven't they? And then the 2 friends that had come out to visit me the weekend before, they got back to the UK, and one of them had a sore throat and a headache, and they had COVID, but that's the only thing that manifested in them. They probably caught it in Spain, or they caught it on the flight home or whatever, and they were okay. But then their husband caught it. He was ill. 3 weeks, he couldn't even get out of bed. He couldn't breathe. He was hospitalised once. She had to get the ambulance out to him. The ambulance said to her, there's no point in taking him back to hospital. He'd be safer at home. Hospitals were packed. In Manchester, you know, people, you know, I don't know, you know, we won't get into an argument about the vaccines, but you cannot deny that COVID existed. It existed. People died of it. Anyway, he survived, luckily, and he's okay now. But he probably only survived because he was quite a fit person. You know, he didn't smoke, etc. But, you know, he was just bowled over by it, whereas she only had a headache and a sore throat for a couple of days. She thought he was going to die. But the thing is, she couldn't, you know, nobody could help her. Friends would leave food at the door or whatever, but nobody could come into the house and help her. And she had to nurse him for 3 weeks. And I say, just call out the ambulance if he got really bad. So I don't think anyone can deny it existed. I know of many people who died of COVID. And then another friend of mine who lives in France, her sister, who is Down syndrome, she got COVID, and I can't talk about this without crying, sorry, but she was in intensive care. Nobody could go and visit her. and she died. And my friend couldn't go and visit her. She couldn't leave France. She couldn't go to her funeral. They couldn't even have a proper funeral for her. And bear in mind, and one thing I think that nobody should forget is that in the meantime, Boris Johnson and all those people, Dominic Cummings, all of them partying, enjoying themselves. Even the night before, even the Queen sat on her own when Prince Philip died. Do you remember that sort of pitiful picture of her sitting on her own, abiding by the COVID rules? And you know I'm not a royalist, but you know I've got a lot of admiration for the Queen. There's her husband died, and the night before that they were having parties in Downing Street. Don't think anyone should ever forget that, how people treated people. You know how the whole thing, the lockdowns, whether you agree with them or not, I'm not against the lockdowns, but the effect that they had on people's mental health, whereas some people just carried on doing whatever they wanted to do. And that's what I'll never forgive the Conservative government for that. And I was watching a different thing happening here. You know, Pedro Sanchez, a lot of Spanish people don't like him, but he was very good. He was on there, he was doing his regular updates. He was very authoritative. It was just him. You know, he wasn't relying on, he would take the medical advice from people and then he would decide what to do. You know, he took the responsibility, etc. So it was horrible. You know, the whole thing horrible, wasn't it? Yeah. And a lot of people have been left with mental health problems, etc. And I do think, you know, that's a big reason why there's such this explosion of mental health issues. But anyway, let's have a look at this reflection. So in Britain today, let me just find out. Oh, I've got to find where I had that ready somewhere. They're having a day of reflection. Let's see. So this article in the BBC is the South East. Oh, let me just share it. The South East remembers the dead on COVID Reflection Day. Now, I think each of these hearts is supposedly someone who died, isn't it, during COVID? So at least 232,000 people in the UK died during the pandemic, with COVID-19 listed as one of the causes on their death certificates. So there are 9 official Day of Reflection events taking place across Kent, Surrey and Sussex on Saturday. Now, you know, you get people like Rees-Mogg. Do you remember him? Who's now a lord. He's a lord now. Of course, they all end up being lords. Get made a lord for being shit now, don't you? So he said people should move on. People should move on. People don't move on from losing loved ones, idiot. So we hope to offer communities across the country the opportunity to join together in commemoration of those who lost their lives. So in Maidstone, 633 trees are being planted in various locations. Oh, I'm getting all emotional. That's why I saved the protest on Big Ben till the end, because I think we might get a bit of light relief with that. So 1 tree for each person in the borough who died during the pandemic. Also be events held at Jeskins Community Woodland, Begdry Forest and Hope Hall, Sculpture Park, etc. In Surrey, people are invited to spend time reflecting in Alice Holt Forest, sign a book of remembrance at Epsom and Newell Borough Council, visit the Reigate and Banstead Borough Council building, etc. And there will also be a series of events taking place. Oh, there's not much there. Sorry, I thought there was going to be much more in there. Might be better on the Sky News. So, yeah, on the government websites, look, it's talking about it. Government.uk. Now, I think it's good to have these days. I don't think we should ever forget We should never forget. But to me, the most important thing we should never forget is how the government had parties at 10 Downing Street and didn't give a shit about what was going on and what was happening, whereas other people, even the Queen, obeyed by the rules. Let's have a look at it. This is an enduring photo for me. So I'm going to start crying now. Let's all have a cry. Let's all have a cry. You know, this photo of the Queen. Of course, Prince Philip died, didn't he? Right in the middle of it all. Now, I don't know that he died of COVID. Where's that picture of the Queen? Look. So at the funeral, everybody had to sit, you know, separately. Fair enough. Look at the Queen. The Queen had to sit on her own because now I'm sure maybe afterwards they gave her a cuddle or whatever. But, you know, because she was setting an example. She was, oh, sorry, I'm not sharing. She was setting an example to people. Now, if you're fortunate to be in a position of power, you know, which at the end of the day, the Queen was, I have admiration for the Queen. You set an example. That's what you do. So there she is, sat at the funeral of her husband of God knows how many years. And she's got to sit on her own. It was such a plaintive photo. And as I say, it doesn't matter what happened after, maybe after they were all hugging each other, I don't know. But she was setting an example because she was showing people what they had to do. In the meantime, Downing Street, they're having parties because they're all having a great time, because a lot of people made a lot of money out of COVID as well, didn't they, with the PPE. These are the things, to me, when we talk about reflecting on COVID, as well as reflecting on the people who died during COVID, we should be reflecting on Michelle Mone, other people that made a fortune out of COVID, because what was that other guy? Oh God, the guy that was Matt Hancock, PPE contracts, Dominic Cummings going off to Barnard Castle and taking the piss and trying to tell people that it was just testing his eyesight. These are the things we should be reflecting on. We should remember how the public were gaslit by people like this. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. So, yeah, most of those failed politicians during that you know, that horrible 13 years of Tory rule, and what I don't, you know, I know Labour people are going to moan about, they're going to moan about everyone, but I still feel prouder of being British now than I did before. I've never felt so not proud of being British as during that Tory shit show and Brexit and all those horrible things that happened. It was Brexit, then it was COVID, it was one thing after another. At least the Queen showed what you should do, and this is what I'd like to see Charlie Boy do. Instead of telling everyone to lead a simple life, I'd like to see him lead a simple life and lead by example in his gold carriage and his golden thrones that he had made for his coronation and all that. I'd like him to show, you know, to lead by example, which the Queen at least led by example, showed people. She had not, you know, she knew. Anyway, so a lot of people were in the same position as the Queen, in that they couldn't sit with their loved ones at funerals, couldn't even go to their loved ones' funerals, and if they did, they all had to sit. They couldn't even give each other a cuddle, or, you know what I mean? And the Queen sort of led by example with this, unlike everybody else. Are you getting riled up? I can feel myself getting riled up as well. Just, I could go right into, so when they talk about, excuse my French, but when they talk about fucking day of reflection, let's reflect on how horrible the British government were during it. And this is why I have my respect that I have for Pedro Sanchez, because what a lot of Spanish people don't like him, but he never, and I don't know what he was doing in his private life. Maybe he was breaking rules left, right, and centre, but he always set an example. I used to look forward to his talks. Saturday, he used to tend to do his sort of address the nation, and say where we were, and you always felt better after you'd heard him speaking. You felt calmer. He was calm. He was authoritative. And then I'd sit and watch Boris Johnson. Wear a mask if you want to, but you don't really have to. Just tell people what they've got to do, for God's sake. So nobody really knew what they were supposed to be doing. So then it splits the public, doesn't it? Because then you're going out and you've got one person wearing a mask, because that's what you're supposed to do. But someone else, bollocks that, I'm not wearing a mask. So they start arguing then. Instead of just saying, this is what you've got to do. That's what Pedro said. I tell you what, if you didn't do it, the police would be on you. There were police everywhere. So, but the thing is, although that might seem draconian, but at least people knew where they were. You said, you can do this and you can't do that. So you were allowed, that's why everyone afterwards got a dog, because you were allowed 15 minutes to walk your dog. It was twice a day. You're allowed to leave your house for 15 minutes within 100-yard radius or a kilometre radius from your house. And your dogs had to do everything they had to do in that 15 minutes. And Riley, one of my dogs, you won't get him to do it in 15 minutes. You were lucky if you get him to do it in an hour. It takes ages. And like the other day, I was there with him, and we were in... we weren't even in the campo. We were on a pavement, and he cocked his leg. Honestly, I think he was weeing for 5 minutes. It was embarrassing. It was like it took a flood. It was like a flood coming down the pavement, and I'm like, oh my God. So that is Riley for you. And then to do a number 2, oh my God, he's very fussy. So he'd be walking around for ages before he found the exact right spot. So it was a challenge. And then you weren't allowed to go out and do exercise or anything, not for the first couple of months you weren't. Eventually then they started letting you out to do exercise. But you had to, certain people at certain times. So I think was it old people first, very old people first, that it used to be age banded. And I think they were working on the assumption that older people get up early. So the older people could go out early in the morning, then the sort of middle-aged people, then the youngish people, and then the teenagers. Theirs was like 1 o'clock or something. But anyway, it was very good. It was a very good. So, yeah, exactly, David. So a lot of people got dogs because... that's my neighbours did that. They got because a lot of them hadn't thought it was hard on the Spanish, the lockdown, because Spanish people are very gregarious people. Anyway, again, I talk about that in the Confessions of a Spanish Teacher. Every night we had to do the 8 o'clock applause. Every night. I think you had to do it if you're watching from the UK. You had to do it once a week on a Thursday or something, didn't you? Oh, no, not in Spain. Every night at 8 o'clock, everyone was out clapping and then shouting over, talking to each other over the street for about another hour. Night, Kelly. So, yeah, then a lot of people, when the restrictions lifted, a lot of people got dogs just in case we had another lockdown. And then, yeah, unfortunately... Well, you couldn't get a dog at that time, could you? You could not get a dog for love nor money because everybody wanted a dog. Now, of course, we're back to the stage of there's not enough shelters for the dogs. So a lot of dogs got returned, or then with the floodings in Valencia, there's in Spain, I'm talking about, obviously. There's a lot of stray dogs, that were people don't know where they belong. So... that were found in the floods and they've ended up in shelters. So yeah, there's a crisis now. So we got like we had like a crisis in the sense of there weren't enough dogs that people wanted to. The demand for adoption was more than the amount of dogs. And as you say, David, the prices. But I would, you know, no offence to anyone who's done it, but I don't pay for. I wouldn't pay for. I always adopt. Always. There's so many dogs, cats in need homes. I would never pay. I don't like breeders either. I don't believe in breeding dogs. That's just my personal opinion. I don't judge anyone who buys a pedigree dog. That's everyone has their right to do what they want, but that wouldn't be for me. I always believe in adoption. There's so many animals out there that need homes, you know. But yeah, the prices did go up. I remember a friend of mine in the UK, so she wanted a dog. Again, to do more because of COVID, really. But she had 2 children, so she had to be careful. Young children at the time; they're older now, but so she had to be careful what dog she took. Shh, stop it! So she couldn't get a puppy in the shelters at all. All the puppies had gone. So she ended up buying a dog, and it was, when she told me how much it was, I was like, "What?" It was thousands. I think it was a Lakeland Terrier or something like that. I just could not believe that anyone would pay that money for a dog when there's so many dogs. But I understand that she had to be careful because she had young kids, so she had to make sure it wasn't a dog with a past. You know, because sometimes when you get a dog from a shelter, unless it's a puppy, you don't know what the background is. So I understand that. But yeah, it just got crazy, didn't it? Anyway, and of course, a lot of people breed for profit. They don't care about the dogs. I'm sure there's some good breeders out there, but there's so many unscrupulous breeders. You hear about them all the time. They're just breeding for profit. And when these dogs went up in price, you know, anyway, I don't believe in making profit out of animals like that either. You know, anyway. So that's our reflection on COVID. So we've had a little reflect on COVID. Where's me orange juice? Actually, it's not orange juice. What is it? Tropical. Let me get some tropical orange juice. Because my throat's going. I can feel my throat now. I've been talking for quite a while. Okay, so that's our reflection on COVID. I mean, most of us would just want to forget it ever happened, but of course we can't, because it leaves a scar. You know, either mental health issues, or I don't think any of us, well, certainly I don't, go out as much as we used to go out before COVID. So a lot of businesses have suffered. My business suffered. Obviously, couldn't teach Spanish. And then when finally we could start teaching again, you know, we had to wear masks. And that's not conducive for conversation in Spanish when you can't even see someone's mouth. But it did mean that's when I started doing Zoom classes. So really, nowadays, I do more Zoom classes than classroom classes. So it changed my business. And Zoom classes was good. So it had some improvements, because it means I can teach Spanish to anybody, anywhere in the world. So that's good. And it meant I got my book finished, because, you know, those kind of things. So you always have to try and look at the positive, don't you? Because there was, I suppose, some positives. Hi, Annie. So, yeah, that's our reflection on